because if you eat corn, lots of corn without nixtamalizing it, you can develop a vitamin B deficiency. I'm pretty sure it's known as pellagra. And so when the Spaniards actually came to Central and South America, they saw these native people that were thriving and they were eating so much corn. And so they took corn back to Europe, but they didn't take the process of nixtamalization with them. And people started getting sick because they started eating a diet with more rich in corn, but without it being nixtamalized. Could we just fall?
So, Jonathan, welcome to the Layered Onion Podcast. Maybe you could introduce yourself and tell us about your company.
So my name is Jonathan Correa. I am the owner and operator of La Cosecha Tortilla Company. We are a 100% nixtamal. I like to describe it as 100% nixtamal tortillas and tortilla chips. We specialize in Mexican. We're starting to specialize more in just like overall like Mexican products or Hispanic products. But the core of our business is the fresh nixtamal tortillas and tortilla chips. And what that means is nixtamalization is the traditional process that Mesoamericans have been using in Central and South America for thousands of years to make fresh masa and things like that. So it's a process of cooking corn in a alkaline solution. And so that's a mixture of water, and in the case of, in Mexico, they use cal, which is a type of limestone that's been superheated to transform the chemical structure of it. And so the stone actually starts out kind of a grayish color, and then they superheat that in an oven, and then that creates a white stone that you can turn into powder. Then when you mix that with water, it creates an alkaline solution. And that alkaline solution dissolves the pericarp on the outside of the corn, which is very difficult to digest. And along that process, there are nutrients that are kind of transformed and made more bioavailable in the corn. This creates a more nutritious product. And the reason why that's important is because that's kind of been a staple food product in Mexico and South America for a long time, because that transformation makes the corn more nutritious. Because if you eat corn, lots of corn without nixtamalizing it, you can develop a vitamin B deficiency. I'm pretty sure it's known as pellagra. And so when the Spaniards actually came to Central and South America, they saw these native people that were thriving and they were eating so much corn. And so they took corn back to Europe, but they didn't take the process of nixtamalization with them. And people started getting sick because they started eating a diet with more rich in corn, but without it being nixtamalized. And so for me, it's about celebrating my culture and reconnecting with a culture that I was disconnected from, because I'm a fourth generation person in America. My family on my father's side immigrated here from Mexico back in the 1920s, and then on my mom's side, they actually immigrated here as well in the 1920s from Germany and Sicily. So I'm kind of a melting pot myself, just like the country.
So how did you learn about the process? Grandparents or?
So for me, I actually, it was a process of trial and error. I didn't have anybody to teach me how to do it. I went to culinary school here in Madison for 2 years, and I've always loved cooking since I was a kid. And through that journey of becoming a professional cook, I started noticing that no one was really doing these nixtamal tortillas in the area, and I wanted to find a way to, like I said, connect with my culture, because over the years, generationally, we started losing the connection to both sides of my family, as far as just like where we came from and those traditions and things like that. So for me, the process of learning was trial and error of nixtamalizing corn at home, reading, the magic of Instagram and connecting with people. I had some very wonderful Mexicans that I reached out to and just asked questions, and they were willing to be a valuable resource for me. And then So I was just nixtamalizing corn and hand grinding it at home in a little hand grinder and just experimenting. And then in 2019, I went to Mexico City before the pandemic really hit. And I got the chance to go to Pujol and talk to them a little bit about it. I had dinner there and then just started talking to them, and they brought me a sample of masa and was like, this is what you're looking for. Like, this is perfect masa, and this is what you're shooting for. And so every day when I'm grinding, I'm always going back to that memory of this is what perfect masa feels like. And so I'm continue to work towards.
Well, it starts with corn, right?
Yeah.
And so what varieties of corn are the best? Obviously, a blue corn, right?
Yeah. So in my experience, the best corns actually do come from Mexico. The heirloom varieties from Mexico. In my experience, it's hard to find any varieties that compare. They can be found, like right now, like we work with Meadowlark Organics for our white corn and some other suppliers for that. I also work with some farmers in Iowa and Ohio that grow corn and trying to find varieties that work really well. So there are some varieties that are grown domestically that do work really well for tortillas, and I'm grateful that I found those options. But in my experience, when I first started with working with companies that were importing corn from small growers in Mexico, and the flavor and color diversity from Mexico is just really amazing. So that's, to me, it's the best. The corns and the growers I work with now, like their corn is amazing too. And I'm just grateful that I found some growers in the area to work with.
I would assume some of it's the growing season because it has a very long growing season compared to here in the U.S., correct? Is that part of it?
I mean, that's a part of it, but also, in Mexico, they have many different varieties, but people have been selecting corn to be nixtamalized and to be used for whether it's tortillas or pozole or for frying and making more crispy, and so people have been very intentional with their breeding in Mexico to nixtamalize the corn. And a lot of the corn that's grown in the U.S. Has its roots in those varieties of corn, but they haven't been up until I feel like recently haven't been that kind of thought process hasn't been put into the production of corn, which is part of the reason why I actually just started working with a group led by Keith Williams, who's a corn breeder here in the Midwest, and he gathered up a bunch of us nixtamal tortilla producers, a few of us from around the country, to help him in his breeding work, to focus on helping him breed varieties that are better suited for nixtamal, and that's the focus of it. So that's really fun to see that people are starting to see that corn isn't just corn. It's some varieties are better for nixtamal than others.
Well, and so much of the corn that's grown in the Midwest, of course, is feed corn and is not, for eating. And so I think that is really awesome that you found a breeder, someone that really wants to work toward it.
Yeah.
You would not know this, but my undergrad was in agronomy.
Okay. Okay, so, that's awesome.
Yeah. In another life, I was in agriculture.
Okay.
So,
me too. Yeah, me too. I worked on a farm after culinary, in culinary school, and after that, and did some tried to run a farm with my ex for a number of years, because I love getting my hands in the soil and love getting dirty and love learning about that. And I really love soil biology too. I'm really nerdy about the symbiotic relationship between plants.
We just had Greenbox here.
Okay.
So he would have gotten nerdy on us about compost soil.
Yeah.
Well, Jonathan, I know one of the things that you are a part of Dane County Food Collective, and one of the efforts that we found jointly was really working on the shallot, but bringing culinary art into the shallot and really working together on mental wellness. And I know that you kind of have a story as well about how really maybe being a chef and really going back to your roots helped with mental wellness. Do you maybe want to share that?
Yeah, I'll try to consolidate it as best I can. So for me, I think that as chefs and as cooks and people who work in the food industry, like we express ourselves through food or through service. I think that many of us grow up in a lot of our fondest memories usually are around food and spent with family and sharing food and those things. And so for me, I express myself through food. When I was a young kid, I remember just like growing up and watching like the original Iron Chef and all those, and Emeril Lagasse and all these like really inspiring like shows that kind of gave me like the insight that like, oh, there's a career, there's a way of expressing yourself through food. And I kind of lost track of that as a teenager when I got into sports and things like that. But I kind of have a complicated relationship with food because food was my first addiction. I was overweight. I was obese for most of my young life, from probably about like 10 until I was, well, maybe like 8 or 9, until the time I was probably 18, 19 years old, when I finally overcame that struggle with obesity. And so, but through that, overcoming that struggle with obesity was also through food. It was learning how to cook better, learning about more about nutrition and getting away from processed foods and a lot of processed foods and sugar and things like that. So food has been kind of a double-edged sword for me throughout my life. It's been an addiction, but it's also been a way to express myself and reconnect with my culture and share a part of myself with the world.
So what then brought you to make the leap from being a chef to starting your own business?
Well, the pandemic. I mean, to really what it was is like I had dreamed of starting this business for a long time. When I was really passionate about working in agriculture, I was like, I'm going to grow the corn for my tortillas, and I'm going to make them, and I'm going to do the whole vertically integrate the whole process, and just very like big-headed, big dreams as far as like what I thought I was capable of at the time, I was working with somebody else at the time to start a restaurant that was kind of focused around this, and that relationship didn't work out very well. But I wanted to continue pushing forward with this because I had started it, and I was like, okay, like I can go out on my own. And the pandemic hit, and I lost that job, and a good friend of mine was saw what I was doing, and he believed in me, and he was like, hey, I have a bar that I can't use. There's a flat top in there. There's a range. He's like, you can use it while we're shut down. And if you make it big, you can reimburse me then. So for about 8 months during the pandemic, myself and a friend at the time, I bought $1,000 worth of corn, and I rented some equipment, and we just made tortillas on a little 4x4 flat top in a bar on the east side for like 8 months, just side by side, and just slowly but surely, reaching out to connections I had in the restaurant industry in Madison and Vitruvian Farms. They had to make a quick pivot too from being, sending stuff to restaurants. They pivoted very quickly to delivering groceries at home. I had a relationship with them. They're like, yeah, sure, we'll start carrying your tortillas and Pasture and Plenty. That's how I got the space to make shop, was because Christy from Pasture and Plenty, she was one of my first supporters. And when I was in that bar, and that's kind of how it got going. And just like one tortilla at a time, we just kept building it until I got to a place where it felt like it was a good idea to make that leap, to full-time.
To full-time?
Yeah.
So one thing that we met at an event that was held this summer at a farm, and one of the things that you did was educating about the whole process of making tortillas. And the whole event was really, I think, folks sharing some of their heritage and because it wasn't just you, there was some Native American heritage, et cetera. But is that part of your goals, is to really think about giving back and educating people?
Yeah, I think that's, for me, that is a big part of it. The fun part about that event was that in Mexico there are natives. You know what I mean? I don't think a lot of people realize that. So that there is natives to America are very diverse. And so it was really fun to bring a small part of that native Mexican culture up here, or like part of that here, to be able to share with people, and to also kind of talk to people whose heritage lies in Native Americans around here. And yeah, the education piece for me is important, because this is an art that is kind of been dying over the years. Like I mentioned earlier, like I just hired my first Hispanic employee, and she's from Mexico. She lived in Mexico City and for most of her life. And I asked her, I was like, Amiga, do you know anything about nixtamal? And she was like, no, I don't know anything. I don't know anything about it. Like, I don't know the process at all. So it's fun to be able to educate people who were born and raised in Mexico about it. And it's also fun to be able to show people in America that a tortilla is just not a tortilla. The tortillas that you can buy on the shelf that are sitting there and shelf stable for months, like, that's not a real tortilla. The flavor and the nutrition and everything that you're getting in that that's not a real tortilla. When a real tortilla is made from fresh masa, it just has 3 simple ingredients, and that's corn, water, and a trace of lime. And to be able to be an ambassador for that was really important to me.
So is the basis the Aztec culture, or what native people?
I can't, and it's not the Aztecs. So the Aztecs, okay. It even predates the Mayans, if I understand it correctly.
Okay.
Because nixtamal, no one really knows like when it started or where it started or how it started.
Mm-hmm.
But in Mexico, it does predate the Aztecs, because there's temples all over Mexico that were Mayan temples at one point that the Aztecs conquered and built on top of. And like Teotihuacan is people think of it the Aztecs, but the Aztecs weren't the first people there. They actually built on top of structures that were already there. So I can't remember the name of the people, but there were people there before the Aztecs that were doing the nixtamal, and yeah.
So maybe talk a little bit about the health of these versus the tortilla, because of course that is what most people think. Mm-hmm. And these are soft. Mm-hmm.
Those were actually made fresh probably like an hour ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that they're soft, and I got the opportunity to actually make them with you, and that was pretty exciting. And it was a lot more. There's a lot of skill involved.
Yeah.
And so I think people see a package and they would not understand the skill and how it bubbles up when you're cooking, and taking it at the right moment. Mm-hmm. Maybe you could kind of talk about that and sort of the nutrition.
So with these, like I said, it's just corn, water, and then there is a trace of lime in there, but essentially it's just corn and water, and because we don't add any lime to it. It's just the lime that is just like naturally in the liquid that the corn is cooked in. And so right now I'm very fortunate that I have some automation, so I'm not hand pressing tortillas anymore. I'm not doing that. I have some more control over that side. But from the nutritional aspect, we only use non-GMO and organic or regeneratively grown varieties of corn, and that's important to us from not only like a sustainability standpoint, but also from a nutrition standpoint, because because our growers are focused on building stronger, healthier soils. All the growers that we work with are all based in the Midwest. And so they're all focused on creating healthier soils, which are going to create healthier plants and healthier food for us. The protein content, the fiber content are going to be superior in these tortillas. There is no any additives or preservatives in there, so that's another health standpoint that I think is important, because I think as we're learning now that I feel like obviously, we don't know what we don't know. So in the moment when having food that was shelf stable for a long time was important because we didn't have a lot of preservation or things like that. It's important, but there can be side effects with those preservatives and things like that. So so there's no additives in any of our products. And then the micronutrient standpoint, I haven't seen any tests on, and I've only seen tests on. So we work with a regenerative farmer in Ohio and Iowa, and they've worked with some of the researchers they've worked with have done analysis on, so like the blue corn that we get is like a blue claridge variety that's regeneratively grown, and so the zinc and the selenium and the protein content and all these things are much, much higher than the conventional corn that's out there. And I think that part of the reason why we're having health problems in this country is because the quality of our food and the nutrient density of our food has just really been diminishing. And, an orange 50 years ago had 4 to 5 times the amount of vitamin C as an orange now, and that has implications over time on people's health. So that's another part of the reason why I think it's so important that we're making something with the highest quality grains that we can find to feed people.
So I see you're also doing salsa.
Yeah, that was a farmer's market ad that we started last year when we did our first farmer's market on Lake Geneva. And they were a huge hit. These are 2 salsas that I was making for different pop-ups that I had done at Imaginary Factory and Robin Room around town and stuff like that during the winters the last couple of years. And so as a complement to my products at the farmer's market, I started doing the salsas. And now that they've kind of started to get a following of their own. So I do the salsas now for all of our farmer's markets. And in the next month or so, they'll be in the Willie Street Co-op too. So, yeah.
Super cool.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited about that. I wish our tortillas were going to get there first, but it seems like the salsas are going to get there before the tortillas, but that's okay.
And what about the chips? Now, what do you do different with the chips versus the tortillas?
So same process. The chips go through our machine, which is tortilla equipment is really, I have this side of me that loves mechanical things. So
that's a good thing as a business owner because you wouldn't have to fix it.
Oh yeah, and that's another thing too. When you have equipment that comes from Mexico and you don't have a customer service that's right in your back door or any sort of local equipment seller who has experience with the machines, you kind of have to learn to fix them yourselves and figure out the ins and outs of them. So there's no difference. It's the same masa that we use for our tortillas, except for our chips. We have a different die cutter that it goes through. So the masa is kind of punched out, kind of like cookie cutter style on an automated oven. So for the tortillas, it just kind of gets cut out in a circle and then goes onto a heated griddle that kind of goes back and forth, and then it comes out the other end cooked. And then we do the same thing for our chips, and then they get fried, very lightly salted, and that's it. So same thing, very minimal ingredients with those. And yeah.
All right. Well, it's super cool.
And we really control our chips have kind of gotten a following of their own through a lot of our really wonderful restaurant customers, and we really try to control down to the gram how much the chips weigh so that the thickness is perfect so they can hold up for chilaquiles at Marigold Kitchen or nachos at the Ohio. They hold up to sauces and salsas really well. They don't.
And that is a big deal.
Yeah. And that's another aspect of doing tortillas and chips in this way where you're making fresh masa. A lot of larger scale chips and tortillas that are on the market are made from masa arena, which it's a corn flour product that you add water to, but they're trying to get as much as they possibly can out of that product, and so they're thinner. The quality isn't as good as far as the thickness and the quality of the corn, and it adds a lot to the flavor and the texture of the chips.
Well, I've had the chips and Yeah,
Yeah.
at the farm event we were at.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. A lot of folks in the food service industry, you talked about first having the food addiction, but a lot of people in the food service industry, as I've talked to more and more people, there really was a culture of alcohol addiction and other mental health challenges. And I know, aren't you working as an advisor in a program?
I am not working as an advisor in a program, but I am a part of a group session that goes on
Okay.
through the Dane County Food Collective. So I joined that. I was a little nervous to do that. I mean, I've done therapy and other things like that, but I've never done therapy in a group setting before. So I was a little apprehensive about it, but it's been really powerful for me to have that group of people to kind of talk to and bounce things off of and everything. So
what do you think is the most difficult part of being in this industry, and that being a chef, being sort of in the food service industry, that really I was surprised at how many folks really have a lot of wellness challenges, both physical and mental. Mm-hmm. And what do you think is the biggest piece of that?
Well, I think that the biggest piece of that is that, especially in the restaurant side, I mean, I feel like I gave up some stresses from like getting off the line and getting off of like working as a cook and working in the service industry, and then took on other stresses that an entrepreneur and food producer would take on. But I think the biggest thing is that we are very passionate about things. So a lot of us that work in the industry are passionate about what we do, and we want to give people the best service and the best quality products that we can. But there's a pace of doing that can wear on you, and just that day-to-day like demand that can be put on you, and sometimes the crazy hours, and it can be really it's really demanding. And I think that in general, in society, we are not being given the tools as kids to cope in a healthy way. And so everybody, and I think not everybody, but most of us are learning unhealthy coping mechanisms. And unfortunately, in the service industry, especially on the restaurant side, we have easy access to alcohol. And I love a shift drink as much as the next person, but I feel like that can be easily lead to maybe struggles with alcohol and things like that. But I think it's just that the high stress, high demand, high pace, high expectations, especially, excuse me, if we're working in a city like Madison, we're known for the quality of our restaurants, the quality of our food and everything, and people have a very high standard, and we want to make our customers happy. We want to put out the best things, and if you don't have healthy coping mechanisms, then you're going to use the easiest out that you have to help deal with that stress and help.
There's water there if you want it.
Yeah.
Just for you. So let me ask you this. What is your dream? First of all, I want to, so let's have you pronounce your business again.
La cosecha.
La cosecha. Say it again.
La cosecha.
It means the harvest.
Yes, it means the harvest. Yes.
And so what is your dream?
Well, my dream, do we want to talk about, I don't even want to say unrealistic, but there's a part of me that has aspirations and like big goals of like, what would it be like to just snag like a small portion of the market share from someone like Frito-Lay? That would feel really rewarding to be able to, like, obviously it's a multi-billion-dollar company and that's like a big aspiration, but I think that my goal is to just continue to provide the highest quality products I can for people, to make eating tortillas that are made fresh and made with local grains, and the highest quality ingredients possible, more available to people, and to get them into more homes, and to just nourish as many people as I can. Because like I mentioned, I struggled with obesity as a kid. And I feel like even if we were to keep the same diet that we have right now, but replace all of the like cheap ingredients and all the fillers and all the nonsense with higher quality ingredients, that we could actually transform the health of our society by just using higher quality products, higher quality ingredients, because we have more nutrition. And then also, by using higher quality ingredients, by supporting farmers that are growing higher quality crops and not just focused on yield, but focused on nutrition and flavor, that we could also have a huge impact on our farmers too. And that's something that I really am passionate about as well on that side, is that, there's a way for us to, and I'm seeing through this, which is really cool, is there's a way to impact our local economy through, when you buy a pack of tortillas from me, you're not only supporting me and my family and my workers, but you're also supporting a farm and their family and their workers. And that money stays in our local economy. And I think that can be really powerful. So yeah, my goal is to just keep growing it and continue to get my tortillas and chips into as many homes and as possible.
So how do we make it accessible for people who are lower income? Because that's one of the things I think that is the saddest part, is that people who are struggle social economically, they are the ones who often end up with having to purchase, living in food deserts and having to purchase food that has a lot of fillers, etc. I know that where my spouse is from, they don't have the nearest grocery store is about 20 miles away. And so Quick Trip or the dollar store is the options. And so, it's a desert. And how do we make this kind of food accessible for folks?
Well, that is a really tough, that's a tough question to answer, I grew up, I wouldn't say, kind of same thing, this small town, Wisconsin. So the nearest grocery store was like 10 miles away, small convenience store, small gas stations and things like that were the closest thing that we had. And I think it's slowly happening, but I would like to see more just like food hubs and different things like that make connecting people to higher quality food a lot easier, and finding ways to create those food hubs. And one thing that I really appreciate with some of the markets that I'm at, and I know Madison does a really good job of this, is the people being able to use like SNAP benefits and things like that at farmers markets to buy higher quality things, higher quality produce. You know what I mean? Like people can come and buy my products at any, at markets and use their SNAP, which I think is really important. So I think that finding ways to continue to make those resources available for people, I think is really important. And just finding more ways to collaborate on delivering products to people. I think that we find ways in this country to subsidize, some things that we need to do a better job of, just like if we're going to subsidize, sending money to other countries or subsidize, agriculture that isn't good for the environment or good for our health, like, we need to take some of that and put it towards being able to help people get access to higher quality food. So hopefully our government we can continue to push our government to make those choices. But if not, then it's us as a community and as people need to continue to find creative ways to get higher quality food to people.
Yeah, and I think when we think about SNAP benefits, they did increase it during the pandemic, but they went right back down. And so it's difficult sometimes if you have just only so much to buy the higher quality stuff, Yeah. So we have to think about that. Maybe there's a way to reward for, buying higher quality.
Yeah.
Less healthy. Because in the end, you pay it on the back end with healthcare, right? So,
Yeah, that's why I've been very passionate for a long time about like health and wellness, is because like I grew up, you know, not if coming from a very affluent area, my parents didn't have a lot of money. I grew up and I was very unhealthy, and like, that's where I put most of my effort is on in my, even though I don't make a lot of money right now, the people think that a lot of entrepreneurs are just, swimming in cash because they own their own business, but that's not the case
any of
right
us
now.
know.
No, yeah. But that's where I put a lot of my focus on, is just eating better. But also, for me, I've had people tell me like, oh, you need to raise your prices. You need to raise your prices. Like you could make more money on your products. And I don't want this to be a splurge for somebody or something. You know what I mean? Like we've kept our prices pretty steady. And I could, charge an extra $1 a pack at the farmer's market, maybe even more in some places, but I don't ever want to. I want to do my best to not price somebody out of being able to buy my products, because I'd rather you be able to afford to eat them every week than it just be like, oh, we're going to splurge this week on these fancy tortillas, or because some places do that. I've seen other, people who are doing the work that we're doing, charge a lot because for their products. I'm not saying that people don't deserve to make more money for the things that they're doing, because it's a lot of work. But there is a balance of being able to make it affordable to everybody, and not just the members of society that are making, a lot of money, and they can afford to just, buy the highest end ingredients and eat them at their home.
So I have a question for you, kind of in wrapping up. If you were going to give some advice to 9-year-old Jonathan, what advice would you give to Jonathan?
Oh, what advice would I give to 9-year-old Jonathan? It's not your fault. Yeah. All the things that the bad things that have ever happened in life are not your fault. You're not to blame. You're not the source of all of the bad things. It's not you, So.
And it's really tough for a young person to not think that, isn't it?
Yeah. It's really hard, as a parent now myself, and as somebody who's working through recovering from my own addictions and poor behavior in relationships, and just like mental health struggles that I've had. Just have to learn to rewire my own nervous system, and to relearn how to, have conversations with myself, and now as a father, I feel like I'm parenting myself over again, like I'm growing up over again, because I'm seeing the moments and the areas where people didn't show up for me the way that I show up for my daughter and my son. So.
Well, I hear you. I often hear this, that people just really wish that they had more confidence in their own voice, and so I'm sure you'll be there for your kids, because it's easy to reflect back and think, but I wish you well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a lot of, I'm grateful because I have, in the past, I really made myself alone. I didn't realize that I had as much community and support that I actually do. And when I learned to stop making myself an island and running away from things that are uncomfortable and running away from being vulnerable and like being willing to like have hard conversations or set boundaries and all of those things that, you know, you wish that you would have learned as a young adult so that you could set you up to have healthy relationships and you know, be a healthier individual, you know, learning all that right now. But it's through community, through being willing to be vulnerable with other people, being willing to have hard conversations, being willing to join groups, you know what I mean? Like the group therapy sessions through the Dane County Food Collective. I didn't think I knew that I wasn't going to get something valuable out of it, but I've learned a lot. And then a lot of it is not only just because we're working with two wonderful therapists, but also because I'm sharing with so many other wonderful people and seeing that I'm not alone in my struggles, that I'm not wrong for my mistakes, you know, and that like we're all human and that we can, if we can be vulnerable with each other, we can actually support each other and help each other grow. And
well, thank you for sharing that, because I think that makes a difference for people to hear it, and it's hard to say it out loud. And, you know, that's one of the things with the layered onion, by us talking about how art can be a healing and, you know, all of this can be a healing mechanism. It's first having to say it out loud.
Yeah.
That was step one.
Yeah.
And so thank you for being so brave.
Thank you. Yeah. And I mean, I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to share my story with more people. And, you know, I will say one thing is that I've learned through that group and other things is that, you know, and I can only speak of this as a man, you know, and as that, you know, right now, like, you know, close to 75% of suicides in this country, you know, are men. It's so hard for us to have these hard conversations and be vulnerable. And I hope they know that they're not alone, that you can talk to people about things. And I've had a lot of good men and good people in general, but good men show up for me in these hard times that I've had the last couple of years. And I just hope people can know that like you can be vulnerable. It's scary. It's very scary, but you can lean into it and you'll be stronger on the other side of it if you do.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that, because I think hopefully we won't see this in our, you know, children coming, that there's been a real crisis right now, but maybe from all of this, people will learn to share and be more vulnerable.
Yeah, that's why I do it. I mean, that's why I'm trying to learn and grow, is because like I have two kids and I see other kids in the world, and I don't, if they could have 10% less suffering than I had when I was a kid, like that's a win to me, you know what I mean? And we can continue to do better as a society. Like we can come back from the things that we're struggling with right now. So
well, thank you.
Thank you.
Could we just fall